Standing frozen in my mother's dining room, I watch as silence swallows the birthday celebration whole. My grandfather's words still hang in the air like smoke after a gunshot. "Margaret, you just called the wrong man your son." The room holds its breath. My sister Jessica's face has drained of all color, leaving her looking like a ghost. Her husband Brad shifts uncomfortably in his chair, his confident smile finally cracking. My 8-year-old son Tommy looks up at me with confused eyes, still clutching the handmade birthday card he spent hours creating for Grandma. For 32 years, I've watched my parents worship Jessica's picture-perfect life while treating me like I'm invisible furniture in their house. Tonight, everything changes. My grandfather just revealed a family secret that will shatter their golden pedestal forever. Growing up as the second son in the Patterson family meant learning to live in shadows cast by someone else's spotlight. While Jessica collected academic awards, landed the star role in every school play, and dated the quarterback, I struggled through algebra and spent Friday nights reading comics in my bedroom. My parents, Margaret and Robert, never missed an opportunity to showcase Jessica's accomplishments to anyone within earshot. "Did you hear Jessica made valedictorian?" my mother would announce at the grocery store. "And she's already been accepted to 3 Ivy League schools with full scholarships." Meanwhile, when I graduated high school with a respectable B average and planned to attend the local community college, the achievement earned barely a nod at the dinner table. The pattern continued into adulthood. Jessica married Brad Hendley, a sharp-dressed lawyer with perfect teeth and an even more perfect bank account. They purchased a sprawling colonial house in the most exclusive neighborhood in Hartford, complete with a circular driveway and manicured gardens that looked like they belonged in a magazine. Their twin children Ashley and Connor attended private schools that cost more per year than I made as an insurance adjuster. Every family gathering became a presentation of Jessica's latest triumphs. "Brad just won another major case," my father would beam. The settlement was in the 7 figures. And did I mention Ashley is taking violin lessons with the same instructor who taught at Juilliard? The conversations never shifted to my life, my work, or especially my son Tommy. After my divorce 2 years ago, raising Tommy alone became my entire world. He's brilliant and funny with curiosity that amazes me daily. He asks questions about everything from why the sky changes colors to how airplanes stay up in the clouds. When he draws pictures, he creates entire worlds filled with dragons who solve problems through kindness instead of fighting. But my parents seem incapable of seeing these wonderful qualities. They forgot Tommy's 6th birthday completely. No card, no call, no acknowledgement. When his 7th birthday came around, I reminded them a week ahead of time. They promised to attend his small party at the local pizza place, but canceled last minute because Jessica's family had invited them to Connor's lacrosse tournament. Last year for his 8th birthday, they showed up an hour late with a generic toy still in the store bag, clearly purchased on their way over. Yet they never missed Ashley and Connor's birthdays. Those celebrations involved elaborate themed parties, professional photographers, and guest lists that read like social registers. The twins received gifts that cost hundreds of dollars carefully selected months in advance. 3 months ago, I experienced a moment that crystallized just how deep their favoritism ran. Tommy had been hospitalized overnight with pneumonia, and the medical bills stretched my budget to the breaking point. I swallowed my pride and asked my parents for help with the $3,000 emergency room costs. My mother sighed deeply and explained that they were going through a tight financial period and couldn't assist with the expenses. 2 weeks later, I stopped by their house to drop off some documents for my father's insurance claim. He was in the bathroom, and I waited in his home office where his computer screen displayed his online banking page. What I saw made my stomach drop like I'd been punched. Monthly transfers to Jessica totaled $15,000. The payments had been going on for 3 years, labeled as family support in the transaction notes. I quickly calculated the total in my head, over $540,000. While they claimed financial hardship about Tommy's medical bills, they had been secretly funding Jessica's lavish lifestyle to the tune of more than $500,000. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. I realized their perfect daughter had been receiving a monthly allowance larger than my annual salary. The European vacations, the designer clothes, the expensive hobby classes for the twins, the new luxury cars every 2 years. None of it came from Brad's legal practice. It all came from my parents' generous financial support. That night, I held Tommy while he slept and made a difficult decision. Despite years of disappointment and neglect, I would attend my mother's 70th birthday celebration. Not for them, but for Tommy. He deserved grandparents who recognized his worth, and maybe this milestone birthday would inspire some genuine reflection about family priorities. I bought my mother a thoughtful gift, a photo album filled with pictures of all her grandchildren, including several beautiful shots of Tommy. I helped him create a heartfelt birthday card with drawings of flowers and a poem he wrote himself. We dressed in our nicest clothes and prepared to celebrate the woman who had given me life, even if she had forgotten to cherish the life I was raising. As we drove to the upscale restaurant she had chosen for the party, Tommy practiced reading his poem aloud. "Grandma Margaret, you are special and kind. You make our family happy and bright like sunshine." His innocent hope that this birthday would be different broke my heart and strengthened my resolve simultaneously. The Riverside Country Club's private dining room buzzed with elegant conversation and the gentle clinking of crystal glasses. My mother had spared no expense for her 70th birthday celebration, choosing the most prestigious venue in our county. Fresh flower arrangements adorned every table, and the menu featured prime rib and lobster tail. Roughly 40 guests mingled in cocktail attire, representing decades of family connections and social relationships. Tommy and I arrived precisely at 6 o'clock, as requested on the formal invitations. He carried his handmade card carefully in both hands, determined not to wrinkle the construction paper he had decorated with such care. I guided him through the crowd of relatives and family friends, many of whom I recognized but rarely spoke with outside these obligatory gatherings. Uncle David approached us first, his booming voice cutting through the ambient noise. "Harley, good to see you, nephew. And this must be little Tommy." He patted Tommy's shoulder with excessive enthusiasm. "Getting big, aren't you? Must be, 10 years old now?" "8, sir." Tommy responded politely, though I could see the disappointment in his eyes. His own great-uncle had no idea how old he was. Aunt Patricia swooped in next her perfume, arriving several seconds before she did. "Tommy, sweetheart, you look so handsome tonight. Are you excited to see Grandma Margaret?" She didn't wait for an answer before launching into a detailed account of her recent cruise to the Caribbean, complete with commentary about the ship's entertainment schedule and buffet quality. My mother held court near the bar, wearing an elegant navy dress and the pearl necklace my father had given her for their 25th anniversary. She accepted birthday wishes from a steady stream of well-wishers, her silver hair perfectly styled and her makeup professionally applied. When she spotted Tommy and me, she offered a brief smile and wave, but continued her conversation with Mrs. Henderson from their book club. Tommy tugged on my jacket. "Can I give Grandma her card now, Dad?" "Let's wait until she's finished talking, buddy. We'll find the right moment." The right moment seemed increasingly elusive as the evening progressed. Every time we approached my mother, someone else commanded her attention with congratulations or reminiscences about shared experiences. Tommy remained patient, but I could see his excitement gradually deflating as we waited for an opportunity that never materialized. At 7:15, precisely 45 minutes after the stated start time, Jessica made her grand entrance. She swept through the dining room doors wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her auburn hair cascaded in perfect waves over her shoulders, and her makeup looked like it had been applied by a professional artist. Brad followed behind her, impeccably dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, carrying their twins like precious cargo. The room's energy shifted immediately. Conversations paused as heads turned toward the Golden family's arrival. My mother's face transformed with pure joy, her earlier polite smiles replaced by genuine radiance. She rushed toward Jessica, with arms outstretched enveloping her in an embrace that lasted several beats longer than social convention required. "Jessica, darling, you look absolutely stunning. And Brad's so handsome as always. Ashley, Connor, come give Grandma the biggest hugs." The twins, dressed in matching formal outfits that could have graced the pages of a children's fashion magazine, dutifully hugged their grandmother before immediately seeking out the dessert table. Their behavior wasn't rude exactly, but it carried the casual entitlement of children accustomed to being the center of attention. Brad accepted congratulations from various relatives with practiced charm, his confident handshake and engaging smile working their usual magic on the assembled family members. He possessed the kind of natural charisma that made people want to be around him to bask in his success and sophistication. "Sorry we're late," Jessica announced to the room, though her tone suggested anything but regret. "Ashley's violin recital ran longer than expected. Her teacher says she's showing remarkable progress for someone her age. We're considering enrolling her in the advanced program at the conservatory." My mother clasped her hands together in delight. "How wonderful, we must hear all about it. And Connor, how is lacrosse season going?" As Jessica launched into detailed accounts of her children's achievements, I watched Tommy's expression grow increasingly confused. His grandmother was celebrating with animated enthusiasm about children she saw regularly, while the grandson standing directly in front of her remained virtually invisible. I guided Tommy toward the appetizer table, hoping some shrimp cocktail and cheese cubes might distract him from the obvious slight. We stood near the windows overlooking the golf course, where the setting sun painted the fairways in shades of gold and amber. "Dad, when will Grandma want to see my card?" Tommy asked, his voice smaller than usual. "Soon, buddy. She's just catching up with everyone right now." But as the cocktail hour continued, it became clear that catching up meant exclusively focusing on Jessica's family. My mother hung on every word about Ashley's academic performance, Connor's athletic achievements, and Brad's latest legal victories. She requested to see photos on Jessica's phone, examining each image with the intensity of an art curator studying a masterpiece. Meanwhile, other family members gathered around Brad, drawn by his magnetic personality and impressive career stories. He regaled them with tales of high-profile cases and strategic legal maneuvers, speaking with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding respect in courtroom settings. "The settlement negotiations took 6 months," Brad explained to a captivated audience, "but persistence paid off. My client received compensation far exceeding their initial expectations." He paused for effect, allowing the impressed murmurs to wash over him. "Sometimes the best legal strategy involves playing the long game." Uncle David shook his head in admiration. "You've really built something special, Brad. The family business could use someone with your strategic thinking." That comment caught my attention like a fishhook. I moved closer to their conversation, trying to appear casual while listening intently. "Speaking of the business," my father interjected, appearing at Brad's elbow with 2 glasses of wine. "We've been discussing some exciting developments, changes that could benefit everyone." Brad accepted the wine with a gracious nod. "I'm honored that you've included me in those conversations, Robert. Family legacy means everything to me." The phrase family legacy sent an uncomfortable chill down my spine. I had worked part-time at my parents' import business during college, contributing ideas that had increased their client base by 20%. My suggestions for streamlining their inventory management system had saved them thousands of dollars annually. Yet no one had ever mentioned family legacy in connection with my contributions. Tommy tugged on my sleeve again. "Dad, I need to use the bathroom." "Of course, let's go find it." As we walked toward the restroom, I noticed a side door leading to an outdoor patio where several guests had stepped out for fresh air. Through the glass, I could see my father gesturing animatedly while speaking to Jessica and my mother. Their body language suggested an intense private conversation. After helping Tommy in the bathroom, curiosity got the better of me. I suggested we get some fresh air, leading him onto the patio, where we pretended to admire the golf course view. From our position near the railing, I could hear fragments of my family's conversation through the partially open door. "Adam, the paperwork is already prepared," my father was saying. "We just need to make it official." "Brad has earned this," my mother added firmly. "He understands business in ways that come naturally to him." Jessica's voice carried a note of excitement. "He's been consulting on major decisions for months already. This just formalizes what's already happening." "The timing feels right," my father continued, "especially with the Hartford expansion project coming up. Brad's legal expertise will be invaluable for navigating those contracts." My stomach twisted as the implications became clear. They were discussing transferring control of the family business to Brad. Not partially, not gradually, but completely. The company my grandfather had built from nothing that my parents had grown into a multi-million-dollar operation would pass to someone who had never worked there, never invested time in learning the industry, never contributed to its success. I thought about the nights I had spent in that warehouse during college, learning about international shipping regulations and building relationships with suppliers. I remembered the innovative marketing strategies I had proposed, the cost-saving measures I had implemented, the genuine passion I had developed for the work. None of that mattered now. Tommy pointed toward a family of ducks swimming in the small pond beyond the golf course. "Look, Dad, the little ones are following their mama?" "Yes, buddy. That's how duck families stay together." His innocent observation felt like a cruel joke. In our family, the little ones were forgotten, while the golden ones received everything. We returned inside as the dinner bell chimed, signaling the transition from cocktails to the formal meal. I helped Tommy find our assigned seats at a table near the back of the room, appropriately distanced from the head table, where my parents would sit with Jessica's family and the most honored guests. As we took our places, I realized this birthday celebration would become a night I would never forget. Not because of joy or family unity, but because it would mark the moment I finally understood how little my son and I mattered to the people who were supposed to love us most. Tommy carefully placed his handmade card beside his dinner plate, still hoping for the chance to present his grandmother with the gift he had created from love. Looking at his hopeful face, I silently promised that regardless of how this evening unfolded, I would never allow anyone to make him feel invisible again. The dinner service proceeded with country club efficiency servers gliding between tables with practiced precision. Prime rib and lobster tail arrived on bone china plates, accompanied by roasted vegetables and Duchess potatoes that had been sculpted into perfect spirals. Conversations flowed around topics of local politics, recent travels, and shared memories spanning decades of friendship with my parents. Tommy ate quietly, occasionally, asking whispered questions about the elaborate place setting or commenting on how fancy everything looked. He had never experienced dining at this level before, and his wide-eyed wonder at the crystal goblets and multiple forks provided the only bright spot in my increasingly dark mood. From our position at the back table, I could observe the dynamics at the head table with uncomfortable clarity. My mother sat between my father and Brad, leaning toward Brad frequently to engage him in animated conversation. Jessica occupied the seat of honor to my father's right, while Ashley and Connor flanked their parents with the bored patience of children accustomed to adult social obligations. My grandfather Walter sat to my mother's left, his weathered hands steady, as he cut his meat with surgical precision. At 86 years old, he retained the sharp posture and keen observational skills that had made him successful as an accountant for over 4 decades. His gray eyes moved systematically around the room, taking in details that others missed. When those eyes briefly met mine across the dining room, I detected something that looked like sympathy, mixed with determination. As the dessert course arrived, individual chocolate soufflés with raspberry coulis, my father stood and tapped his wine glass with a sterling silver knife. The gentle chiming sound gradually quieted the room's conversations until respectful silence settled over the assembled guests, friends and family. My father began, his voice carrying the confidence of someone accustomed to addressing business meetings. Thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate Margaret's 70th birthday. 7 decades of life love, and the kind of wisdom that only comes from experience. Polite applause rippled through the room. My mother smiled graciously, accepting the acknowledgement with practiced elegance. But tonight isn't just about looking back, my father continued. It's also about looking forward to the future our family is building together. His gaze shifted meaningfully toward Jessica and Brad. Margaret and I have been blessed with children and grandchildren who make us proud every single day. Tommy straightened in his chair, perhaps thinking this might be the moment when his existence would finally be acknowledged. I placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, though my own hope was rapidly diminishing. Jessica has shown us what success looks like when talent meets determination. Her accomplishments in her career, her community involvement, her dedication as a mother, these qualities reflect the values we tried to instill in her from childhood. More applause, louder this time. Jessica dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, genuinely moved by her father's words. And Brad. My father's voice grew even warmer. Brad has become the son we always hoped for. His integrity, his business acumen, his commitment to family, he embodies everything we value. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. The son they always hoped for, sitting right there at their table while their actual son sat forgotten in the back of the room. My father raised his wine glass. So tonight, as we celebrate Margaret's birthday, we also want to share some exciting news about our family's future. The room leaned forward collectively, sensing an important announcement approaching. Margaret and I have decided it's time to begin transitioning our business legacy to the next generation. After careful consideration, we're thrilled to announce that we've completed the legal paperwork to transfer majority ownership of Patterson Import Solutions to Brad, effective immediately. The room erupted in surprised congratulations and applause. Guests rose from their seats, raising glasses in toasts to Brad's good fortune. Uncle David whistled appreciatively, while Aunt Patricia exclaimed about how wonderful the news was for the family. Brad stood gracefully accepting the accolades with humble charm. I'm deeply honored by Robert and Margaret's confidence in me. I promise to uphold the standards of excellence they've established and to build upon the foundation they've created. More applause thundered through the dining room. Jessica beamed with pride, reaching over to squeeze Brad's hand. Ashley and Connor looked confused, but pleased by the adult excitement surrounding their father. My mother rose from her chair, her face glowing with happiness. I also want to make an announcement. In addition to the business transition, Robert and I have established education trust funds for Ashley and Connor to ensure their bright futures are fully supported. The celebration intensified. Relatives approached the head table to shake Brad's hand and congratulate my parents on their wise decision. The conversation buzzed with comments about natural leadership, perfect timing, and bright futures for the family business. Tommy looked up at me with confused eyes. Dad, what's a trust fund? It's money set aside for college and other expenses, buddy. Did Grandma set one up for me, too? The innocent question pierced through my numbness like a knife blade. I don't think so, Tommy. Throughout the chaos of congratulations, I noticed that my grandfather, Walter, remained seated, his expression unreadable as he observed the celebration. He hadn't joined the applause or offered congratulations. Instead, he studied the scene with the intensity of someone solving a complex puzzle. My mother wasn't finished with her announcements. She raised her hand to quiet the room once more. "There's one more thing I want to say tonight, something I've wanted to express for a long time." The guests settled back into their seats, anticipating another heartwarming revelation. "Brad, you've brought so much joy and stability to our family. Your success, your character, your devotion to Jessica and the children, you truly are the son I always wanted." Those 8 words, "You truly are the son I always wanted," landed with devastating precision. The room collectively exhaled in appreciation of the emotional sentiment, but I felt like I was drowning in front of 40 witnesses. My mother continued, her voice thick with emotion. "I know my father would have loved you, Brad. He built this business with dreams of passing it on to someone who would cherish it as much as he did. That someone is you. More applause? More congratulations? More validation of my complete irrelevance to my own family's future." I sat frozen in my chair, processing the public declaration that my existence as their son meant nothing compared to their son-in-law's perceived value. Tommy tugged on my sleeve. "Dad, Grandma forgot about us again, didn't she?" His words snapped me back to reality. This wasn't just about my hurt feelings anymore. My 8-year-old son was witnessing his grandmother publicly declare another man as the son she wanted while ignoring his very existence. The psychological damage being inflicted on him was unacceptable. I was gathering the courage to leave when my grandfather Walter slowly rose from his chair. His movement was deliberate and commanding, causing conversations to quiet as people noticed his intention to speak. "Margaret," he said, his voice carrying the authority of his 86 years. "I appreciate the sentiment behind your words, but I think there's something important you've forgotten tonight." My mother looked puzzled but encouraging. "Of course, Dad. What would you like to share?" Walter's gray eyes swept across the room before settling on my mother's face with laser focus. "Margaret, you just called the wrong man your son." The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. The room held its collective breath as the implications registered. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Wine glasses paused halfway to lips. Even the servers stopped moving. My mother's face drained of color. "Dad, I'm not sure I understand what you mean." "Oh, I think you understand perfectly," Walter replied, his voice gaining strength. "You've just publicly declared Brad to be the son you always wanted, while your actual son sits in the back of this room with your grandson, whom you've ignored all evening." The silence became deafening. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward our table in the back where Tommy and I sat like deer caught in headlights. Tommy pressed closer to my side, sensing the tension without fully understanding its source. Walter wasn't finished. "But before we continue with these touching family declarations, I think everyone here should know exactly what kind of man you're calling the son you always wanted." Brad's confident demeanor flickered for the first time all evening. "Walter, I'm not sure what you're implying, but perhaps this isn't the appropriate time or place for—" "On the contrary," Walter interrupted his accountant's precision, cutting through Brad's smooth lawyer speak. "This is exactly the right time and place, because what I have to say about you, Brad, is going to change everything." The room remained frozen in anticipation, sensing that whatever was about to unfold would be remembered long after the birthday cake had been consumed and the guests had gone home. My grandfather had just shattered the evening's celebratory mood with surgical precision, and everyone present knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Walter reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a manila folder thick with documents. His movements were steady and purposeful, betraying none of the trembling hands typically associated with his age. The silence in the dining room had become so complete that I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the country club's lobby through the closed doors. "Before I share what I've discovered," Walter began, his voice carrying to every corner of the room, "I want everyone to understand that what I'm about to reveal has been verified through multiple sources. These aren't accusations or suspicions. These are facts. Brad's face had gone pale beneath his carefully maintained tan. Walter, I don't know what kind of misinformation you've been given, but I think we should discuss this privately, rather than disrupting Margaret's birthday celebration. Oh, we're well beyond private discussions now, Walter replied firmly. You see, Brad, when someone attempts to manipulate my family and steal from innocent people, I consider that my business. Jessica stood up abruptly. Grandfather, you're obviously confused about something. Brad would never— Sit down, Jessica, Walter commanded with unexpected authority. You're going to want to hear this because it affects your future more than anyone else's. The folder opened with a soft rustle of papers. Walter lifted out several photographs and bank statements, arranging them systematically on the table, like evidence in a courtroom presentation. 3 months ago, I became suspicious about Brad's sudden financial success. As someone who spent 40 years analyzing business finances, I recognized inconsistencies between his reported income and his actual spending patterns. He held up a photograph of Brad's house. A $1.2 million home on a lawyer's salary purchased with a down payment of $300,000 in cash. European vacations costing $20,000 each. Private school tuition totaling $40,000 annually for 2 children. Country club memberships, luxury vehicles, designer clothing. Walter's gray eyes found Brad's face. The mathematics didn't add up, so I hired a private investigator to examine your financial history more closely. This is ridiculous, Brad protested, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. You have no right to investigate my personal finances. I have every right when those finances involve stolen money. Walter shot back. He lifted another document from the folder. This is a record of client account transactions from your law firm, Henley and Associates. Notice anything unusual about the patterns? The document was too far away for most guests to read, but Walter's detailed explanation painted a clear picture of financial irregularities. Over the past 2 years, Brad has systematically transferred money from his clients' settlement accounts into personal investment portfolios. Small amounts at first, $5,000 here, $10,000 there. But the theft escalated as his confidence grew. Jessica sank back into her chair, her face reflecting dawning horror. That's impossible. Brad would never steal from clients. Walter's expression softened slightly when he looked at his granddaughter. I understand why this is difficult to accept, Jessica, but the evidence is overwhelming. He produced another set of documents. These are bank records showing deposits that coincide exactly with the missing client funds. Notice the amounts and dates. They match precisely. My mother found her voice for the first time since Walter's bombshell. Dad, surely there's been some mistake. Brad is a respected attorney. He wouldn't risk his career and reputation for $320,000, Walter interrupted. Because that's the total amount he's stolen from 17 different clients over 24 months. The number hit the room like a thunderclap. $320,000 wasn't an accounting error or a misunderstanding. It was systematic, calculated theft that had been planned and executed over an extended period. Walter continued his methodical presentation. The victims include elderly clients who trusted Brad with their estate planning accident victims, who depended on their settlements for medical care, and families who believed they were securing their children's futures. He held up a client file. Eleanor Whitman, age 78, hired Brad to handle her late husband's pension settlement. She should have received $85,000 to cover her mounting medical expenses. Instead, she received $55,000 while Brad pocketed the difference. The room erupted in gasps of outrage and disbelief. Stealing from elderly clients crossed moral boundaries that even the most cynical observers found shocking. Mrs. Rodriguez entrusted Brad with her son's accident settlement, money intended to cover ongoing physical therapy after a construction site injury. $22,000 disappeared from that account. With each revelation, Brad's carefully constructed facade crumbled further. His hands shook as he reached for his wine glass, spilling burgundy liquid across the white tablecloth. How did you obtain these records? Brad demanded, grasping for some procedural objection that might discredit the evidence. Walter smiled grimly. My investigator has contacts within the legal community who became concerned about irregularities at your firm. Your own partners have been cooperating with federal authorities for 6 weeks, Brad. They've been monitoring your activities while building their case. The revelation that Brad's partners were involved in the investigation added another layer of betrayal and deception to an already devastating situation. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has been conducting surveillance of your financial activities, Walter continued relentlessly. They have recordings of telephone conversations where you discussed moving money to offshore accounts to avoid detection. Jessica buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. The perfect husband and father she had believed in was dissolving before her eyes, replaced by a criminal who had built their entire lifestyle on stolen money. My father, who had been silent throughout Walter's presentation, finally spoke. If what you're saying is true, then everything we've been celebrating tonight is built on lies and theft, Walter confirmed. The business transition, the trust funds, the grand announcements, all of it based on the false assumption that Brad is a man of integrity. Walter pulled out one final document. This is an arrest warrant signed yesterday by Federal Judge Patricia Coleman. Brad is scheduled to be taken into custody tonight. The words sent shockwaves through the assembled guests. Several women gasped audibly, while men shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. The elegant birthday celebration had transformed into a public exposure of criminal activity that would be discussed and analyzed for years to come. You coordinated this? My mother asked Walter, her voice barely above a whisper. I coordinated the timing, Walter confirmed. The investigation was already complete. I simply ensured that the arrest would happen during an event where Brad's true character would be revealed to everyone who has been supporting him. He looked directly at my parents. Margaret Robert, you were about to hand over a multi-million-dollar business to a federal criminal. You were about to entrust your life's work to someone who steals from vulnerable people to fund his luxury lifestyle. The implications were staggering. Not only had my parents been preparing to transfer their business to a thief, but they had been publicly humiliating their actual son in favor of someone who had been systematically deceiving the entire family. Walter's gray eyes found mine across the room. For the first time all evening, someone in my family was looking directly at me with respect and recognition. Harley, he said clearly, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent dining room. Would you and Tommy please join us at the family table? I think it's time your grandmother remembered which grandson has been sitting in this room all evening waiting patiently to give her a birthday card he made with his own hands. Every head in the room turned toward us as Tommy and I stood up from our banished table in the back. As we walked toward the front of the room, Tommy clutched his handmade card against his chest, finally getting the moment he had been hoping for all evening. But this moment would be remembered for reasons none of us could have imagined when the night began. As Tommy and I made our way toward the head table, the silence in the dining room felt heavy enough to crush the elaborate floral arrangements. Every footstep echoed against the hardwood floors, while 40 pairs of eyes tracked our movement from the back of the room to the center of the family drama that was rapidly unfolding. Tommy walked beside me with uncertain steps, still holding his birthday card, but clearly sensing that something significant was happening beyond his 8-year-old understanding. When we reached the head table, Walter placed a gentle hand on Tommy's shoulder and guided him to the empty chair beside my mother. Margaret, Walter said firmly, this is your grandson Tommy. He's been waiting all evening to give you something special. My mother looked down at Tommy as if seeing him for the first time. Her face was still pale from Walter's revelations about Brad, but she managed a trembling smile as Tommy shyly offered her the handmade card. I made this for you, Grandma, Tommy said softly. It has a poem I wrote myself. She accepted the card with shaking hands, opening it to reveal colorful drawings of flowers and hearts surrounding Tommy's carefully written words. Grandma Margaret, you are special and kind. You make our family happy and bright like sunshine. I love you very much. Happy birthday. Love, Tommy. For a moment, the only sound in the room was my mother's sharp intake of breath as she read her grandson's innocent expression of love. Tears began forming in her eyes as the contrast became undeniable between Tommy's pure affection and the calculated deception they had been celebrating in Brad. Walter wasn't finished with his presentation. He turned back toward Brad, whose confident demeanor had completely evaporated, replaced by the cornered expression of someone whose carefully constructed lies were collapsing in real time. The federal investigation uncovered something else interesting. Walter continued pulling another document from his seemingly endless folder. Brad, would you like to explain to your wife and in-laws why you've been pressuring them to complete the business transfer so quickly? Brad's silence spoke volumes. His hands gripped the edge of the table until his knuckles turned white, and perspiration had begun forming on his forehead, despite the air-conditioned comfort of the dining room. The answer, Walter provided, when Brad remained mute, is that he needed legitimate assets to hide behind when the investigation became public knowledge. A substantial business ownership would provide legal protection for some of his stolen assets during the federal prosecution. My father's face went ashen as the implications registered. You mean he wasn't interested in preserving our family legacy? He was just trying to protect himself from criminal charges. Precisely, Walter confirmed. The urgency about completing the paperwork, the emphasis on immediate transition, the legal consultations about asset protection. It was all designed to shield Brad's criminal proceeds from federal seizure. Jessica finally found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. Brad, tell them this isn't true. Tell them grandfather is wrong about everything. Brad opened his mouth several times, but no words emerged. His legal training, which had served him so well in manipulating clients and family members, proved useless when confronted with documented evidence of his crimes. The silence stretched until Uncle David cleared his throat uncomfortably. Maybe we should give Brad a chance to explain his side of the story. Walter's gray eyes fixed on Uncle David with laser intensity. His side of the story? Would you like to hear about his side of stealing from Eleanor Whitman's medical fund? Or perhaps his perspective on taking money meant for the Rodriguez family's therapy expenses? He pulled out additional client files, spreading them across the table like playing cards in a high-stakes poker game. Here's Sarah Mitchell, a single mother whose divorce settlement was reduced by $15,000 that went directly into Brad's personal account. Here's James Parker, a construction worker, whose disability compensation was partially redirected to fund Ashley's violin lessons. Each revelation struck the room like a physical blow. The guests who had been celebrating Brad's success just minutes earlier now understood that every luxury in his life had been purchased with money stolen from people who trusted him to protect their interests. My mother studied Tommy's card again, then looked up at Brad with an expression I had never seen before. Gone was the admiration and maternal affection she had shown him throughout the evening. In its place was something that looked like disgust, mixed with profound disappointment. You let me call you the son I always wanted, she said slowly, her voice gaining strength with each word. You sat there and accepted that honor while knowing you had stolen money from people who needed it for medical care and basic survival. Brad finally found his voice, though it came out as a weak protest. Margaret, I can explain everything. The financial irregularities you're hearing about are temporary misunderstandings that will be resolved through proper legal channels. Temporary misunderstandings. Walter's voice rose for the first time all evening. $320,000 stolen from 17 clients over 24 months represents a temporary misunderstanding. The specific repetition of the numbers made Brad's crimes sound even more calculated and deliberate. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a single poor decision. It was systematic theft that had required extensive planning and execution. Jessica stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor with a harsh screech that made several guests flinch. I need some air, she announced, though she made no move towards the door. Instead, she stood frozen beside the table, staring at her husband, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Jessica. Brad began reaching toward her with desperate eyes. You have to understand I was trying to provide for our family. Everything I did was motivated by love for you and the children. Love! Jessica's voice cracked with emotion. You stole money from sick people and elderly clients to pay for our vacations. You built our entire life on other people's suffering. The question hung in the air like an accusation that demanded an answer. When Brad remained silent, his guilt became as obvious as if he had confessed outright. Walter pulled out his cell phone and checked the time with deliberate precision. Speaking of timing, I believe our guests from the Federal Bureau of Investigation should be arriving momentarily. As if summoned by his words, the dining room doors opened, and two individuals in dark business attire entered the room. The woman approached our table with the confident stride of someone accustomed to taking control of situations, while her male partner positioned himself near the exit. Brad Henley? The woman inquired, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Yes, Brad replied, weakly, his voice barely audible. Agent Sarah Collins, Federal Bureau of Investigation. You're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and theft from client accounts. Please stand up and place your hands behind your back. The words that every person fears hearing in their worst nightmares echoed through the elegant dining room of the Riverside Country Club. Brad's arrest was happening in front of 40 witnesses, including his wife, children, and extended family members who had been celebrating his success just minutes earlier. As Agent Collins read Brad his rights, the room remained frozen in stunned disbelief. Ashley and Connor began crying, confused by the sight of their father being handcuffed by federal agents. Jessica reached for them instinctively, though her own tears made it difficult to provide the comfort they desperately needed. The investigation has been ongoing for 8 months, Agent Collins explained to the assembled guests. Mr. Henley's law partners have been cooperating fully with federal authorities since irregularities were first discovered in client account audits. She turned toward my parents with professional courtesy. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, you'll need to contact your attorneys immediately regarding the business transfer documents. Any assets transferred to Mr. Henley within the past year may be subject to federal seizure as proceeds of criminal activity. The implications hit my parents like a freight train. Not only had they been deceived by Brad's character, but their attempt to transfer the family business to him could result in federal prosecution for them as well. As Brad was led toward the exit in handcuffs, the elegant birthday celebration lay in ruins around us. Crystal glasses sat abandoned on tables, expensive meals grew cold on fine china plates, and 40 guests tried to process what they had witnessed. Walter returned the documents to his manila folder with the same methodical precision he had used to present them. His work was finished, and justice was beginning to unfold exactly as he had planned. Tommy looked up at me with wide, confused eyes. Dad, why did the police take Uncle Brad away? Because he took money that didn't belong to him, buddy. Sometimes adults make very bad choices. My mother was still holding Tommy's handmade card, reading his innocent poem over and over again, as if the simple words could somehow restore meaning to a family celebration that had become a public disaster. The golden child pedestal that had dominated our family dynamics for 32 years lay shattered on the floor of the Riverside Country Club, and nothing would ever be the same again. 3 days after the catastrophic birthday party, my phone rang at 6:30 in the morning. I had been awake for an hour, already unable to sleep, since the events at the country club had shattered whatever remained of my family's facade of perfection. Tommy was still asleep in the next room, exhausted from trying to understand why his grandmother's party had ended with police sirens and crying relatives. Harley. My mother's voice sounded 20 years older than it had on her birthday. Could you please come over? We need to talk about some urgent financial matters. The drive to my parents' house took 15 minutes through suburban streets, lined with autumn maples dropping their leaves like golden confetti. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was returning to help the people who had publicly declared their preference for a criminal over their own son just 72 hours earlier. I found my parents in the kitchen where I had eaten countless childhood breakfasts. But the familiar space felt different now. My father sat hunched over paperwork spread across the granite counter, his usually immaculate appearance replaced by wrinkled clothes and unshaven cheeks. My mother stood by the window overlooking their garden, her silver hair uncombed and her eyes red-rimmed from crying. "The business accounts are empty," my father announced without preamble. "Brad gained access to our operating funds during the transition process and transferred everything to offshore accounts before his arrest." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Everything? How much are we talking about?" $760,000. My mother replied, her voice hollow. "Our entire cash reserve, the money we had set aside for retirement, the emergency fund we built up over 30 years of careful saving." I sank into one of the kitchen chairs where I used to do homework while my mother prepared dinner. The magnitude of Brad's deception was staggering. He hadn't just stolen from his law clients, he had systematically looted my parents' life savings as well. The federal agents explained that Brad had been planning this theft for months. My father continued. "The business transition wasn't about family legacy or trust. It was about gaining legal access to our accounts so he could drain them without triggering immediate fraud alerts." My mother turned from the window with tears streaming down her face. "Harley, we've been such fools. We gave that man everything, our respect, our trust, our business, our money. And we treated you like you were nothing." The admission hung in the air between us, carrying the weight of 32 years of favoritism and neglect. Part of me wanted to say, "I told you so," or walk away from their self-created disaster. But looking at their devastation, I realized that my anger was less important than Tommy's need for grandparents who could learn from their mistakes. "Where's Jessica?" I asked. "Upstairs in her old bedroom with Ashley and Connor," my mother replied. "She lost the house to foreclosure yesterday. Brad had mortgaged everything against his legal defense fund, apparently anticipating that criminal charges were inevitable." I climbed the stairs to Jessica's childhood room, where princess wallpaper and participation trophies still decorated the walls. I found my sister sitting on her twin bed, staring at a photo of her wedding day, while her children slept on an air mattress nearby. "I should have known," she said without looking up. The expensive gifts, the sudden vacations, the way he always had cash available for anything we wanted. I convinced myself that his legal practice was more successful than he let on. "Did you know about the client theft?" I asked directly. "No." She answered immediately, her voice carrying the conviction of truth. "But I knew something was wrong with our finances. Bills that should have been easy to pay became sources of stress. Brad would get defensive whenever I asked specific questions about money." She finally met my eyes, and I saw genuine remorse mixed with the exhaustion of someone whose entire world had collapsed in a single evening. "Harley, I'm sorry. Not just about the money or the business, but about everything. I let Mom and Dad turn me into this perfect golden child who could do no wrong, and I let them treat you like you were invisible." Her apology felt genuine, but I needed to understand the depth of her recognition. "Do you realize what it was like for Tommy to watch our mother call another man the son she always wanted while he sat in the back of that room?" Jessica's face crumpled as the full impact of her son's humiliation registered. "He's 8 years old, and he wanted nothing more than to give her a birthday card he made himself. Instead, he got to watch our family celebrate a criminal while ignoring the innocent child who actually loves them." The conversation was interrupted by my mother calling up the stairs. "Harley, could you come back down? Your grandfather is here." Walter sat at the kitchen table with another manila folder, this one significantly thicker than the one he had brought to the birthday party. His gray eyes looked tired but determined as he spread documents across the surface. "I've spent the last 3 days working with federal investigators and our insurance company." He began without preamble. "The situation is complicated, but it's not hopeless." He opened to a page covered with financial calculations. The business theft falls under our commercial crime insurance policy. We should recover approximately 80% of the stolen operating funds, though the process will take 6 to 8 months. My father straightened for the first time in days. 80%. That would be enough to keep the business operating. More than operating, Walter continued. I've been analyzing our client contracts and supplier relationships. With proper management, Patterson Import Solutions could be more profitable than it's ever been. He turned toward me with an expression I couldn't quite read. The question is whether we have someone capable of providing that management. The implication was clear, but I needed to hear it stated explicitly. Are you asking me to take over the business? I'm asking you to save it, Walter replied firmly. You have a degree in business administration experience in our industry, and most importantly, the integrity to rebuild client trust after Brad's criminal association. My parents looked at me with expressions that combined hope, desperation, and the dawning recognition that their neglected son might be their only salvation. There would be conditions, I said carefully. Complete financial transparency, updated accounting systems, and ethical guidelines that prevent anyone from accessing business funds for personal use. Whatever you think is necessary, my father agreed immediately. Walter pulled out another document. There's something else. I've been setting aside money from my pension for the past 8 years, specifically for Tommy's education. The fund currently contains $63,000. The revelation stunned me. While my parents had been showering Jessica's children with trust funds and opportunities, my grandfather had quietly been ensuring that Tommy's future was protected. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because I wanted it to be a surprise for his 18th birthday, Walter replied. But given recent events, I think you should know that someone in this family has been planning for his success all along. Tommy's voice carried down from upstairs, as he called for me, probably awakening from an afternoon nap, confused about why we were at his grandparents' house on a weekday. Dad, are you here? Coming, buddy, I called back. As I headed toward the stairs, Walter stopped me with one final comment. Harley, this family has an opportunity to start over. The question is whether we're wise enough to recognize what really matters before it's too late. Looking around the kitchen at 3 generations of Pattersons dealing with the consequences of misplaced priorities and shattered illusions, I realized that sometimes the greatest disasters create the possibility for the most meaningful redemption. The golden child pedestal was gone forever, but maybe we could build something better in its place. 6 months after my grandfather's devastating revelation at the Riverside Country Club, I stood in the federal courthouse watching Brad receive his sentence. Judge Patricia Coleman's voice echoed through the courtroom as she delivered 8 years in federal prison plus full restitution to his victims. The man who had once commanded rooms with his charismatic confidence now sat hunched in an orange jumpsuit, finally facing the consequences of his systematic theft. Jessica had filed for divorce 3 weeks after his arrest, a decision that surprised no one who witnessed the birthday party disaster. She sat in the gallery during sentencing, not out of lingering affection for Brad, but to ensure closure for herself and her children. Ashley and Connor would grow up knowing that actions have consequences, even for people who seem untouchable. The transformation in my family had been nothing short of remarkable. My parents underwent what could only be described as a complete psychological overhaul, attending therapy sessions to understand how their favoritism had damaged relationships for decades. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, their counselor, helped them recognize patterns of behavior they had never acknowledged before. We created a golden child mythology around Jessica, my mother explained during one of our weekly family meetings. And in doing so, we devalued everyone else, especially you and Tommy. These meetings had become a cornerstone of our healing process. Every Sunday afternoon, the entire family gathered in my parents' living room to discuss progress challenges and plans for moving forward. The conversations were sometimes difficult, but they were honest in ways our family had never experienced before. My father's approach to business had transformed as dramatically as his approach to parenting. Under my leadership, Patterson Import Solutions implemented transparency measures that exceeded industry standards. Every financial transaction required dual approval, client communications were documented in detail, and monthly reports were distributed to all family stakeholders. "I never realized how much wisdom you had about this business," my father admitted during one of our strategy sessions. "Your ideas for expanding into sustainable packaging materials have increased our profit margins by 37%. The Sustainable Packaging Initiative had been my brainchild, developed from observing market trends toward environmental consciousness. Within 4 months, we had signed contracts with 6 major retailers who wanted to reduce their carbon footprint without sacrificing product protection. Our revenue had increased beyond anything Brad could have stolen, proving that honest innovation was more valuable than criminal schemes." Walter came out of retirement to help restructure our operations, bringing 4 decades of financial expertise to ensure our practices exceeded federal regulatory requirements. His meticulous attention to detail had not diminished with age, and his presence provided additional credibility with clients who had been concerned about our association with Brad's criminal activities. "Trust is earned through consistent behavior over time," Walter explained to our staff during quarterly meetings. "Our goal is to demonstrate integrity in every decision, no matter how small." The office culture had improved dramatically under ethical leadership. Employees felt valued and secure, knowing that their jobs depended on legitimate business success rather than criminal subterfuge. Several staff members commented that the workplace atmosphere felt more positive than it had in years. Jessica's transformation had been the most surprising of all. Stripped of the financial support that had enabled her artificial lifestyle, she discovered strengths she never knew she possessed. She enrolled in community college to complete a degree in early childhood education, pursuing work that provided genuine satisfaction rather than social status. "I spent so many years being what other people wanted me to be," she reflected during one of our conversations. "I never took time to figure out who I actually was underneath all those expectations." Her children were adjusting well to their new circumstances. Ashley continued violin lessons, though, with a different instructor whose fees were more reasonable. Connor joined the community soccer league instead of the exclusive private club, discovering that he enjoyed the game more when winning wasn't connected to his family's social standing. Most importantly, Jessica had developed a genuine relationship with Tommy. She began including him in activities with her children, creating the kind of cousin bond that should have existed all along. Tommy adored having older cousins who actually paid attention to him, and Ashley and Connor enjoyed having a younger cousin who looked up to them with admiration. My parents' relationship with Tommy had undergone the most dramatic transformation. They began spending individual time with him every week, learning about his interests, and supporting his activities with the same enthusiasm they had once reserved for Jessica's children. My mother attended every soccer game, cheering from the sidelines with genuine pride. "Tommy has such a creative mind," she observed after watching him build an elaborate castle from building blocks. "I can't believe I missed seeing this for so long." My father took Tommy to work, occasionally teaching him about business operations in age-appropriate ways. Tommy showed natural curiosity about problem-solving and customer relationships, asking insightful questions that surprised the adults around him. "Grandpa, why do we send products to stores instead of directly to people?" Tommy asked during one visit. "That's an excellent question," my father replied, launching into an explanation of distribution networks that somehow held an 8-year-old's attention for 20 minutes. The business recovery had exceeded our most optimistic projections. Insurance settlements covered 84% of Brad's theft, higher than originally estimated. More importantly, our reputation for ethical practices attracted new clients, who specifically sought companies with demonstrated integrity. Revenue for the year was projected to reach $2.4 million, 40% higher than the previous year under Brad's influence. The increase came from legitimate business growth rather than criminal activity, providing sustainable success that could be maintained and expanded over time. Walter's education fund for Tommy had grown to $78,000 through conservative investments and continued contributions. Additionally, my parents established a new education fund with equal contributions for all 3 grandchildren, ensuring that Ashley Connor and Tommy would have equal opportunities for higher education. Every child in this family deserves the same support and encouragement, my mother declared during the fund announcement. No more favorites, no more golden children, just equal love and equal opportunity. The community response to Brad's prosecution had been overwhelmingly positive. Local news coverage focused on the courage required to expose family corruption and the importance of holding white-collar criminals accountable for their actions. Several of Brad's victims contacted us to express gratitude for Walter's investigation that led to their restitution. Eleanor Whitman, the elderly client whose medical funds Brad had stolen, sent a handwritten note that brought tears to my mother's eyes. "Your father-in-law gave me back my faith in human decency," she wrote. "There are still good people in this world who will fight for what's right." As Tommy's 9th birthday approached, the entire family focused on creating a celebration that would demonstrate our commitment to making him feel valued and loved. My mother spent weeks planning elaborate festivities that surpassed any party Ashley or Connor had ever received. The birthday party took place in our backyard, decorated with superhero themes that reflected Tommy's current interests. 20 of his classmates attended, along with extended family members who were eager to show their support for the grandson they had previously overlooked. When it came time for speeches, my mother stood before the assembled guests with tears in her eyes and Tommy's original birthday card in her hands. "9 months ago, I made the worst mistake of my life." She began, her voice strong despite the emotion. "I failed to recognize the treasure that was sitting right in front of me. Tommy, you are kind, creative, intelligent, and loving. You are everything a grandmother could hope for in a grandson." She paused to wipe away tears before continuing. "I also want to publicly apologize to my son Harley. For years, I failed to appreciate the man of integrity and strength that he became, despite my neglect. Tommy is lucky to have you as his father, and I'm lucky to have you as my son." The applause from party guests was enthusiastic and genuine. Tommy beamed with the joy of a child who finally felt fully accepted and celebrated by his family. My father's speech focused on lessons learned and promises for the future. This family has discovered that real success comes from supporting each other, not from competing for attention or approval. We're stronger together than we ever were when we were focused on individual achievement. Walter's speech was characteristically brief but profound. "Sometimes the greatest gift is having illusions shattered, so we can see what was real and valuable all along. Today, we celebrate not just Tommy's birthday, but our family's rebirth." As the party continued into the evening, I watched Tommy play with his cousins, while adults engaged in genuine conversations about shared interests and mutual support. The atmosphere felt different from any family gathering I could remember. Warmer, more authentic, and infinitely more meaningful. Later that evening, as I tucked Tommy into bed, he looked up at me with the contented expression of a child who felt completely secure in his place within the family. "Dad, this was the best birthday ever," he said sleepily. "Everyone was paying attention to me and really listening when I talked. That's how it should always be, buddy. You deserve to feel special and loved every day, not just on your birthday." "Are Grandma and Grandpa going to keep being nice to us?" The question revealed the residual insecurity from years of neglect, but I was able to answer with complete confidence. "Yes, Tommy. They've learned that family means loving everyone equally, and they're never going to forget that lesson again." As I turned off his bedroom light, I reflected on the journey our family had traveled over the past 9 months. Brad's criminal exposure had destroyed the illusion of perfection that had governed our relationships for decades, but it had also created space for authentic connections based on genuine love and mutual respect. The golden child pedestal was gone forever, replaced by a foundation of equality and integrity that would serve our family for generations to come. Sometimes the most painful revelations lead to the most beautiful transformations, and our family was living proof that second chances can create stronger relationships than first impressions ever could. Justice had been served, lessons had been learned, and love had finally found its proper place at the center of everything we valued. The son who had been overlooked was now leading the family toward a future built on truth instead of fantasy, and the grandson who had been ignored was now surrounded by relatives who recognized his worth. In the end, the greatest victory wasn't financial recovery or criminal prosecution. It was the discovery that authentic relationships and mutual respect create stronger families than perfectionist facades ever could. We had learned that real love doesn't require competition, and true success is measured by the quality of connections rather than the accumulation of achievements. Have you ever experienced a moment when painful truth led to positive change in your family relationships? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes the most difficult conversations create the strongest bonds. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone who might benefit from understanding that families can heal and grow stronger together. Thank you for listening to our journey, and I hope your own family relationships are filled with the kind of authentic love and mutual respect that makes life truly meaningful.